Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prabhu-Radhadesh Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadesh Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Jaya Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Thank you for singing so beautifully, playing so beautifully. Narada Muni Bajai Radhika Ramana Name Nama Mani Udita Hoy Bhakata Gita Same. Narada Muni's playing his Veena. The original Jimi Hendrix. Narada Muni. Narada Muni Veena playing. Jimi Hendrix could melt people's hearts, Narada Muni was melting stones, like a superhero. And when the gathering of devotees, the name of Radhika Raman, it descends, he, she descend amongst the devotees in the form of the holy name. The Lord is present. Shubhadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhuttadaya Srimate Radhanath Swami Niti Namane. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhuttadaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prabhu-Radhadesh Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschati Deshatarni. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Adityanam Bhavinabhyo Vaishnavyo. So, I don't have to say it because it's obvious, but I'm completely, what's the right word? I'm completely I have no claim to the status of being able to teach anyone to do anything related to anything. Let's speak of Kirtan. But I'm really, really grateful that all of you have come, and I'm grateful that through the grace of the devotees and through the grace of all of you that I keep getting encouraged to do Kirtan. So I definitely don't think it's because of my qualifications, but maybe because of my persistence. Or something, the Lord is rewarding my persistence. He's tired of hearing me knocking on the back door. It's like, all right, give that guy some mercy already. Just get him to shut up. You know the story of Narada Muni and the personified ragas? Anyone heard this story? This is when Narada Muni, during his transition from being a Gandharva, he once went traveling and he went to a planet where everyone was deformed, some horrible physical deformation. And Narada said, what's happening on this planet? And they said, these are the personified ragas, and you have deformed them through your singing. Because of you, they are all broken and beaten. So if Narada Muni is like that, what chance is there of me having any attracting the Lord through my singing? Sometimes I joke, kind of serious, hope that when I'm in the spiritual world, I'm a frog on the bank of the Yamuna. Me and Hari Kirtan are there, getting warmed up, waiting for the coward boys to come along. I'm like, okay, come on. And Krishna and the coward boys come by and they're like, such a nice Kirtan, frogs. And we're like, So this tune that I just sang, very beautiful story for me, and I'd like to start today's session with this story. There's a man named Madan Mohan Brijbasi, and he's come from a long family of Brijbasis living in Varshana, and he was famous as a singer also, and he used to sing on All India Radio. He was like the voice of Sunday morning on All India Radio, something like this, singing bhajans. And in his later years, he traveled around at the order of his guru to raise money to care for the holy places in Vrindavan, especially Varshana. And he passed away a few years ago, and I'll tell you the story in a second. But once he came to meet my Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Radhanath Swami, in Baltimore at a friend's house, and Radhanath Swami doesn't speak Hindi or Braj Bhasha, and Madan Mohan Brijbasi doesn't speak English. And they sit together. They were sitting on a couch like this, and Madan, you gotta come closer. Sorry. And then Madan Mohan Brijbasi was holding Radhanath Swami's hand like this. And every few minutes he would look at him and he'd say, Radhe Radhe. Radhe Radhe. Yeah, this is when Radhanath Swami would say Radhe Radhe. And they would just like this. And Madan Mohan Brijbasi, his laugh is like this. You know how Radhanath Swami shakes his shoulders when he laughs? You know? So Madan Mohan Brijbasi, his laugh is like this. So It's just, this is it. Radhe Radhe. So they were just like long time, no conversation, And if anyone else came in the room, the Indian tradition, like, so he'd hold Radhanath Swami's hand to make sure everyone knew that we weren't finished talking, And they would come, yeah, you this and this and this and that. Yeah, then he'd come back and Radhe Radhe, like this, So all of a sudden he comes down from the couch. I was sitting there in the room trying to soak up something, whatever was there, I wanted that, and he comes down and he grabs the harmonium and he goes like this. So I sit down across from the harmonium and he goes like this. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And he played the tune and then he turned the harmonium around and he said, you play it now. There's no one else there. So somehow or other, I'd never met him before in my life, but somehow or other he wanted to give me this tune.
Wow.
Completely mystical experience and in front of my Guru Maharaj. I still don't know exactly what it means, but of course ever since then I've been doing this tune. I think my daughter was, Revati, my older daughter, was I think 2 at the time. She's 14 now. And when we went back to Varshana the year or 2 later, we went to Mangar, where he's from, the mountain where Srimati Radharani goes when she's really angry at Krishna. And he wasn't there, but the other devotees were there. Narsingha Baba, flute player, and I was there, and I sang this tune for them. And Revati danced. And when she was young, she's shy now. I hope one day she goes back to her wild dancing. When she was little, she used to, okay, you can't say dance. She used to dance like that, And they were in ecstasy. She was dancing. So somehow or other, this tune always reminds me of this devotee. And I should tell, the story is that he would always sing this one bhajan to Radharani. Please, Radha, let me spend my life sweeping the stairs of your temple. It's like a Brajbasha bhajan that he used to sing. I don't know the bhajan. And that's what happened. That's exactly what happened. One morning, the pilgrims, when he was home, he would do this service every day, sweeping the stairs of the temple in Mangar. And one day, pilgrims saw him in the morning. He had been sweeping the stairs, and they came back in the evening, and his body was there at the end of the stairs, and the broom was there, and he was gone. So in my mind, I always imagine that moment where he's singing and sweeping the stairs, and he's ascending towards Radharani's temple, and Radharani just says, okay, please now you come with me, and just leave that body there. Don't worry about it. Someone will clean it up. Just leave that body. So these tunes that are sung by the different devotees, they give us a glimpse into their mood. Prabhupada's tunes. I heard who was listening to that during the play? There was that recording of Srila Prabhupada, early days recording of Srila Prabhupada. You notice that's a tune that we don't usually hear, but the way Prabhupada is like inverting the tune. So these tunes are the kind of evolving ecstasies of devotees. And it's just notes. I understand they're just notes. But when we sing them in that mood, we're tasting the ecstasy of that devotee. We're tasting their ecstasy because the tune has a certain mood or a certain approach or a certain style. So by entering into the kirtan with that mood, we're able to kind of walk in the footsteps, like peeking behind. If like someone's very shy, and they're meeting someone like kind of prominent, they might hide behind their mother or their father, right? So you're glimpsing them through the perspective of your father or through your mother, I'm not ready for a relationship myself. I'll just peek and see the way my father or my mother is dealing with this person, then I'll understand. So these tunes are like that. We can just hold on to the dhotis or the skirts and, peek and see. This is how Krishna's, There's this famous story of Srila Prabhupada was, I think this is in Los Angeles, and Srila Prabhupada was taking darshan of the deities. And I heard this one pujari speak about how they turned around to offer the article to the crowd, and they could, because they were now blocking Srila Prabhupada's darshan of Krishna, they could glimpse for a moment the way Prabhupada was looking at Krishna from the other side, from the deity side. And they tell the story in Los Angeles that when Prabhupada saw Krishna, when they opened the deities, devotees in the back of the temple in Los Angeles were hit with water from Prabhupada's tears. They're Prabhupada's tears. Everyone who was there saw it. They shot across the room. Prabhupada's tears showered the temple room. And Prabhupada and the devotees in Los Angeles who were there at the time, it wasn't during the water offering. It was at the beginning of darshan. And they got those tears from the floor and they were putting them on their heads. Prabhupada's tears of ecstasy. See, Krishna. So these tunes, they're all so filled with so much, so much bhava, so much beautiful mood, that we're not qualified to taste on our own, but we can take it as prasad from behind,
Melody prasad.
Melody prasad. Wow. Yeah, tasty. So I was hoping that today's workshop would be a little practical and we could discuss some practical things, but I wanted to make sure to start our discussion today of really putting the emphasis on the fact that we are just lucky to even be in the Kirtan, not that we are in any way able to control the Kirtan. So these discussions that may happen now are not a question of being able to control the holy name. They're really a question of how to prepare ourselves to be ready in the right way, to serve the holy name. And they always say that the best servant is someone who understands the mind of his master. It's quite an interesting idea because you have to kind of guess in advance what your object of your service wants. So you have to make some assumptions, which on one side someone could say that's a little controlling, to be like, this is how we're going to do it. First we're going to go here, then we're going to go here, then there's going to be this breakdown, and then maybe we can do this, and maybe there can be the guitar solo, and it's why are you being so controlling? But if it's in the mood of service, it's the ultimate service. Better to be completely organized. Then master can do whatever he or she wants, but I'm ready for anything, I'm prepared. So it's not thinking that I'm controlling the kirtan, but it's kind of like being ready for anything. Be prepared for what the holy name manifests. As opposed to being like a disorganized servant. I don't know, it's always spontaneous, something will happen, what tune are you going to sing today? Whatever, it doesn't matter. Something will come, it'll be good. That's okay too, but to be more and more of that mood, really preparing, doing everything I can to put my best possible foot forward, and really not from a place of ego, from a place of service. So all these things that I might bring up now, they're really trying to come from that place of facilitation and service. So So one thing that I mentioned 2 days ago, but it's important to mention. Does anyone remember what I said about Srila Prabhupada's tip for how to do really good kirtan? I mentioned it very briefly. That you should
chant in a way that you can keep going without getting tired.
Without fatiguing yourself. So this is really interesting. This is something that I've been struggling with. My tendency is when things start to kind of get out of my control, I tend to hold on tighter. As a guitar player, the more tired I get, I realize I'm pushing even harder on the chord to try and get it to be right, and you get more and more tired that way. So really, you have to learn to let go. And I really highly recommend doing kirtan with your best friends, because if you can do kirtan with your best friends, you learn to trust each other. And you learn that the kirtan is leading all of you. And if you're a little confused or fatigued, the best thing to do is pass it to your friend. And their inspiration will take the kirtan to a new place. And it's very relaxed. You don't have to control the kirtan. The kirtan's guiding all of you. Just like what surfer thinks they're controlling the ocean? Only a fool. At best, the surfer is able to kind of read the signs and go with the flow of the ocean. So, I think of Kirtan as the best metaphor for active spiritual life. Because who here considers themselves an experienced Kirtan leader? Not that you're so amazing, but just you have plenty of experience leading Kirtan. Come on, guys. Come on. Who's led some Kirtan? Okay. So humble. Experienced Kirtan. You've done it. You have a fair amount of Kirtans that you've done. Right? Who, as amongst you, as experienced Kirtan leaders, is discouraged when someone who's not such a good singer, when you ask them to lead and they sing and they're not such a good singer? Do you feel discouraged by that? No. Do you, quite the opposite, feel encouraged that they gave their best effort, even though they may not seem like a good singer, they gave their best effort? Who feels that way when someone just, they're just not that good and they're just like, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. You're like, wow, everyone's like, Hare Bol, So in spiritual life, this is the same way. It's not a question of being afraid of contributing in some way. We should be fearless in our humble attempt. And just try our best, especially if we're asked by the devotees. Our friend Karnamrita, who's also a very beloved Kirtan leader, she taught me a really wonderful lesson. She told me a story that her teacher in Vrindavan had asked her once to sing amongst the gathering of senior kind of like Vrindavan Goswamis, kind of like elders, and she declined. A couple of times, and she declined. Later, he chastised her really heavily. He said, "You think this is your voice? Who are you to say no when you're asked to lead Kirtan? Who are you? When you're asked to do Kirtan, you immediately do Kirtan. Who are you to say no?" So Kirtan's a great metaphor. We attract Lord Chaitanya's mercy by engaging others in Kirtan. Kirtans are better when everyone's involved. We like this morning we had a really nice Kirtan, and everyone was leading. We just passed them. It just was leading. Everyone was leading. Ecstasy, dancing. There are some devotees, they sing the same tune every Kirtan. Every single Kirtan, they sing the same tune. For example, Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Practically every Kirtan, right? He had a few tunes. That was it. It was really simple. Yeah. So, I think that's one very important thing to remember, that Kirtan, especially this workshop was called Tips and Tricks and Techniques for Leading Kirtan. So here's a great first one we talked about. If you realize you're about to sing that double high part, and then you're not going to be able to sing for the rest of the day. I mean, I've learned this myself. How about don't?
Pass it on who can.
Pass it to someone else who can. Save your own voice and don't become fatigued so that you can lead more Kirtan later. Right? And then this thing that Kirtan is a great metaphor. So what are the things, let's all open this up for discussion. What are some of the things in Kirtan that are metaphors for our larger spiritual life? What are some of the things that happen in Kirtan that are examples of... You want to take the microphone? Sorry, the mic is as loud as it can be.
I don't know how to express everything in English. But
say it in French.
Okay. No, I'll try in English.
Okay.
I think I have the impression that in the Kirtan, You have to be able to listen to others. So this is a metaphor in life, in general, and also in spiritual life.
Very, very important point.
Yeah, because we are a group, we don't have the same tonality, we don't have the same voices, boys, girls, and many different voices. And we are a chorus, we need to be together, so we have to listen to others before expressing, and this is important.
It's such a great point. So let me expand your point even more. This is such, everyone heard this point, right? How much listening is required in a kirtan. We were talking about this yesterday. This is the elegance of spiritual life. It's when they use the word elegance when they're talking about a math solution. Have you ever heard that term? This is a very elegant math solution. So when people use that term, it's because every way you look at it, it's just perfect. You know, you turn it and it gets more beautiful the more you analyze it. So this is the elegance of these topics. So first of all, one of my favorite stories to tell is the story of Mother Teresa, who was asked once by a reporter, "What do you say when you pray?" And Mother Teresa said, does anyone know what she said? She said,
I don't say anything.
She said, "I don't say anything. Mostly I just listen."
Right.
There's another step. So then they said, "Well, what does Jesus say?" And she said, "He doesn't speak so much either. Mostly he also listens." Shravanam. This is the listening relationship. You know. The other thing about this that just reminded me when you said this is, one thing seen from the wrong perspective is a limitation. That same thing seen from the correct perspective is an opportunity. The greatest artists in the world will tell you that their art only became good when they were told, "I'm sorry, but we only have white beads. You can only use white beads to make your necklace." Wow, only white. Okay, well, let's, and then create this elegant, incredible thing, I'm sorry, you can build whatever you want. There's no budget, no problem, but it has to stand in only 12 feet on the edge of this cliff. And that's like, okay, wow, limitations, right? So, for example, in Kirtan, the ladies sing low. Okay, usually ladies are here. All the ladies sing, comfortable, right? Comfortable. So that's like, sing this one. So this is G. This is where Achyuta Gopi sings. Right? I sing here. Right? Which is actually low for men. Some men sing here or and I know some guys who sing right? So this is a limitation. How can I sing in Kirtan if the guys are singing so high? We have to sing so low, and then right? For years, this was always this problem for us, until we stopped thinking of Kirtan as having a beginning point and an ending point. And I'll explain what I mean. If the Kirtan starts in one place and then proceeds and proceeds and proceeds and proceeds and fructifies until it gets to this point, and that's the end of the Kirtan, then you're kind of thinking, well, this has to fit with this, and this has to fit with this, and if this doesn't fit with this, then we can't do this part, and so we're stuck. We can't do Kirtan together. But after years of doing Kirtan, what all of us have realized is, what is low for Achyuta is high for us. So she can sing the high part low, and we can sing the low part high. So what happens is the Kirtan just starts to tumble endlessly. As soon as you go high, and you're starting to reach the end of your voice, it's perfectly suited for the ladies to begin singing and increase the intensity. And as soon as they get to the end of their voice, it's perfectly suited to hand it back to the men to begin to sing again. It's perfect in that sense, but you have to embrace it in that way. Another example is rhythm. A kirtan doesn't have to be slow or fast, because play the fastest beat you can.
Now you're on the spot.
Fastest beat you can. Oh, he's taking off his ring. Fastest possible beat.
I don't usually play.
Yeah, I know. Just play the fastest you can. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Right? So what am I singing? Double slow to his fast. And the faster he sings, so this is one of the techniques that I've learned playing with young hotshot mridanga players.
Good one.
You encourage them, yeah, go faster, until they're like bleeding, like their blood is coming out of their pores, their ears. And you just Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, like totally peaceful, no problem. Yeah, play yourself into oblivion, no problem. And the other thing is, and this is also, a lot of tunes, they have a double fast part, right? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram. Now play slow. So if you're feeling like the kirtan is not going anywhere, the drummer is not getting a cue that you're trying to like play a little faster, you can just sing your double fast part. Now play really slow. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna. You see, like, it's neither one needs each other. They're independently alive. So just to finish this point, so the beautiful thing is, in the right consciousness, there's this verse Krishna says in Gita, Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir Brahmagno Brahmanahutam Brahmevatena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina. I think it's like 424 or something like that. Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir. So Prabhupada's purport is a very elegant purport, if you want to read Prabhupada's purport at some point. Prabhupada talks about basically how there is nothing but Krishna. There's nothing but Brahman, that spiritual energy. What separates matter from spirit is our consciousness. When we look at things through the lens of sense gratification, how is this pleasing to me? Then it becomes matter. But when we see that same thing with how it's pleasing to Krishna, it regains, this is from Srila Prabhupada, it regains its essential spiritual nature. In other words, Krishna is right here, right now. We're surrounded by the spiritual world. The only thing holding this reality in place is our false ego. If we could just let the false ego go, we would regain our true spiritual nature and we would reawaken to our spiritual essence. So in that sense, Kirtan is that practice of learning to facilitate through service and let go. Any other thoughts? How is Kirtan a metaphor for our spiritual lives?
I was just going to say, basically you said that to me a lot of it has to do with letting go and the dissolving of the ego, just the hearing our own voice. And I've mentioned I really like acronyms, like EGO standing for easing God out. So when I'm kind of in that place in my head, or if you're concerned about your voice or whatever you caught up in, it's got to sound a certain way, then I'm more in my head. So to me, it's about letting go. And again, we were talking the other day about like giving people opportunity to sing. And it's a little like, but it's like to move through that feeling of just getting caught up in yourself.
Yeah.
So whether we're singing with a group or individually, there's just so much surrender, and initially to Krishna, but there's so much surrender happening. It's my experience.
Beautiful. So, that's a great point. Any other thoughts?
Yes, sometimes there will be playing where there's people who are not really involved, they're just sitting. I'm not sure about how to read that, but so I'm saying that sometimes it's sitting in the kirtan, singing kirtan when there's people guests the temple who are not really singing, just sitting, listening.
Okay.
It may be hard to say how that would be corresponding to some principle in life. I feel very alone then, as if I have to do it myself, pull everybody along.
Because they're just sitting there, they're not participating.
They're not.
Who here has had that experience where you're leading kirtan and you feel like no one else is singing? Why do we think that happens? Because those people do sing sometimes, right?
Or they sit in the back. You want to come closer? No, thank you, no thank you.
Sometimes it's ourselves. Sometimes it's the kirtan leader themselves. And your mind is too distracted. So
Let's pass the mic. Yeah. Thank you.
Often as a kirtan leader, if your mind is also very distracted, if you can't focus, if you're scattered a lot, then people feel that subconsciously and they don't participate. Because you yourself are not even participating properly.
When you're making the kirtan, when you are making the kirtan, you're playing up front, then you have to only have joy in it. You don't have to look around how many people there are. You can have joy in yourself, alone, just play the kirtan. And when you play it right, people come along, I think.
Good. Lots of good things.
Yeah, a little bit to add on that point, I definitely agree. And if anything, I was going to say, it is always your own fault or impression, because if you're chanting very sincerely or you're very focused, you probably won't care so much what's going on around you, because you're trying just to taste the holy name and you're focusing on that relationship. And most likely, if you are really in that mood, the chances are that the people that are there in the room will assimilate that and will join in. So often, if we're in that space where we are seeing these kind of things, we could maybe put a mirror in front of that seeing and look at ourselves, like what is our mood right now? Are we focusing more on what other people are going through, or are we actually focusing on our chanting and trying to engage people through some maybe more deeper chanting?
What I've experienced also is that we have a very kind of congregational chanting experience. This is how we experience Kirtan. But a lot of people don't experience it that way, and they like to just kind of not participate and just listen. And it happens so many times.
Hold the mic a little closer.
Sure. It happens many times when we were in Mantra Lounge in London or something, that I would actually think the same, like these people are not really enjoying, but I felt like I'm just going to try to just do my service and, do what I can. And then at the end, some people that looked like they didn't care at all actually would come, and they were really touched, and it was their first experience chanting. So I think it's also like not really caring about, everyone has their own experience. Some people come from a tradition of meditation and prayer that's very internal, and they don't know how to express it like this lively. And that's just their own experience.
So tying this back into this idea of the metaphor, kirtan being the I believe kirtan is the great metaphor for our spiritual life. And I believe that if we are attentive in kirtan, we will see, and japa too. I mean, they're kind of like, so who says, like, maybe Satchidananda Swami says the heart and the lungs. Japa's the, lungs, and kirtan is the heart. You need both to survive, right? So I think japa is also like that. And if we're attentive enough in our japa or attentive enough in our kirtan, the Lord is telling us, giving us experiences that might be erasing lifetimes of future difficulty if we can just pay attention and learn those lessons in kirtan. So tying back into this idea that it's a metaphor, is it okay for some people to come to the temple and only eat. Is that okay? Right, we know it's okay. But how many months is it okay? Right, you see my point? Like, there's a point where we're just like, do something! You're sitting here eating all the time, But this is not our line. Our line is patiently encouraging and some stories coming into my head are we did a program once at Princeton University, and there was a section for the teachers, and there was one man with a very long white beard in the back, and he was just, the whole time, he was just glaring at me like this. And I thought, oh my God, he must be analyzing every Sanskrit word and looking at how I'm mispronouncing everything. It's Krishna, not Krishna. I was like, I got so mental. The whole concert, it's like, I would look around and there was like this black hole over here sucking all of the energy out of the kirtan, Afterwards it came up to me. That was very incredible. One of the most beautiful experiences in my life.
Oh my God.
I hate to see him when he's angry. So I learned a lesson there. We had the same thing happen in South Africa. We were doing kirtan, and South African Indians, mostly on the audience, they're very cultured and sattvic kind of people. They don't express a lot of emotion publicly. They're a little guarded. They're very, very polite. Like this is the culture. No one moved a freaking muscle the entire kirtan. Okay, it wasn't me alone. Like with some random. It was myself, Ananta Govinda, Janavi, I think Vish, and I think Achyuta. Like, it was like the dream great kirtan group. Like, and we were just, there was lights, we were sweating buckets, like smiling at each other, like, whoa, this is horrible. And I remember after we got off the stage, I remember I went and I walked right into like Ananta's face and I said, anything would be better than this. Working at a bank would be better than what we just did. This was horrible. It's like, and then devotees, over the next few days, one devotee, called our house where we were staying in the morning. We could not sleep, Prabhu. We were so ecstatic from the kirtan. We stayed up all night chanting.
Wow.
Were you at the same kirtan? So I've been. I like to gather information from all over the everywhere that I can and apply it to our presentation of Krishna. And I'm watching a master class by the comedian. What's his name? Linda. Steve Martin. And Steve Martin says that he learned long ago in stand-up comedy that if you just pretend like you're having the best time, everyone else will have a great time too. Because if there's a joke that they don't get, they'll think, he thinks it's funny and it must be funny, everyone else is laughing, and it's just like, this is great, so in that sense,
until you make it.
yeah, so then applying that to spiritual life, we don't know where people are coming from. It's possible that for someone to even enter into the kirtan, it was the greatest challenge of their life. Like, for them to be sitting in the back of the temple may be the most difficult thing for them, challenging them on every level to just sit there. So the best service we can do is just chant with a smile, gently letting the holy name do its work. Now, obviously, we don't want to fill our lives with difficult kirtan experiences. So, as much as possible, stick with people who love doing kirtan with you. And do as much kirtan with them as possible, because you'll feel encouraged. And, there's a Prabhupada quote. Prabhupada says, you must cooperate amongst the devotees, and if you cannot cooperate with this is paraphrasing, if you cannot cooperate with the devotees that you're with, find some other devotees to cooperate with. But just somehow or other, find some devotees to cooperate with. If you can't get along with these ones, go find those ones and cooperate with them, we have to find that harmonious place. But we also have to learn to, I think, let the holy name do its work. Any other thoughts or comments? Please.
Sometimes, like we were saying, sometimes we're doing a bhajan and there's a group of people and they're not participating. Maybe they're not familiar with devotees or like that. And one good tip I can give is that you can do like small breaks in your bhajan and explain things. And then you capture the people and they can identify with what you're doing because you're giving them clues, you're giving them introductions to what you're doing, and then they feel much more at ease and they can really understand what you're trying to do because maybe they don't know anything about it. So that's nice. I use that in conference, in many presentations or bhajans like that. Just have little times where you just explain things, tell a little story, and that breaks the ice, and it's really nice.
That's a beautiful point.
Yeah.
We talked about this a little bit 2 days ago. Use your mouth and express yourself. Say, please now, you sing. Try this. Hare Krishna. Really just be loving and kind and welcoming. When we used to do street Sankirtan in Los Angeles, when I was a brahmachari back in 95 or something like that, we used to stop the Kirtan. We had a rule that when the Kirtan would start to crescendo, get ecstatic, and devotees want to just start dancing, we would stop the Kirtan right when everyone's like full attention. This chanting of Hare Krishna is the prime, whatever, repeat something, say something, because everyone's focused, and then they want to take part, I thought you, Prabhu, you had your hand? In the black shirt, you, Prabhu. Oh, you didn't have your hand? So then let me just bring up this other point that I wanted to mention, which is here's just some. I lost my train of thought, but here's some thoughts on another way that it's like a metaphor. So the holy name is the deity, right? When we're all singing together, the holy name is the deity. Right? Who was in Drita's art class yesterday? Anyone was in his drawing class? So he spoke about how in the different regions in India, they basically use the same proportions and the same structure to draw the deities. So basically Vishnu is certain numbers of angulas, and his arm is this far and is like that. The shoulders are this way. It's basically always the same. So each region, they put in their artistry by the way they decorate or embellish on the clothing or the different elements. So in that same way, I always think of the deity being the holy name. I think of the tunes and the melodies and the things as like, dressing or like clothes, flowers. Like a guitar solo is like, it's like a really long scarf or something. That you're draping all over Krishna, or tying a turban, or like a certain rhythms, Krishna's ankle bells, like that. You can kind of dress the deity through your musical embellishments. Any other thoughts on this topic? Any other ways that we see Kirtan or Japa as a metaphor for our spiritual lives? Yeah.
Just like a devotee made a point in a class one time that when you come to see the deities, you don't come to see the pujari, and the pujari doesn't think that people come to see him. So he said, in a sense, he was using this as an analogy for the the one who is giving Bhagavatam class, sometimes we are just so nervous to give the class. He said they don't come to see you, they come to hear you, what you say, they come to hear the Bhagavatam. So just like the Pujari doesn't think, he's showing Krishna with the flame, and so the same way, we chant the holy name and we think that the people don't come to hear me, to see me, I have to just present the holy name.
Beautiful point. So there's so many, this is so nice. So Kirtan is better when we're all together. This is a great metaphor, right? The more the merrier. On our Kirtan recordings, we have this track. I'm giving you guys my producing secrets, my Kirtan producing secrets. So we do, usually in the studio, so you want Kirtan to have a natural feeling, right? When you're recording Kirtan, you want it to have a natural feeling. So in the studio, what we'll usually do is kind of make a plan, and then we'll record a live Kirtan. And then we have the Mridanga player play along with that Kirtan. And then you add the harmonium, add the voice, then little by little, then you take away that original Kirtan. And you have the structure that's there, and you have the same mood and everything, but now you can be a little more attentive to the details. There's less background noise, all those things. You can clean it out, and then what you're left with is the mood that was there, that was captured, and then you sketch on top of that, back in all the details. So still what happens when you're done with that is it's quite sterile. You've lost some of that spontaneity. So we record this thing we call the party track, which is basically everyone just doing whatever they want, whenever they want, and then you're playing the other song and you're listening, and just Haribo, clapping off time, Haribo, everyone's singing, some people are singing on, some people are singing off, and then depending where you can mix that in at different amounts, and it brings that spontaneity back into the Kirtan. So, this is like a practical thing for anyone who wants to do Kirtan recording. But specifically, it highlights for me how if you take out those things that are not harmonious, it loses something. Those of us who think we can't sing so well, I don't know if you're aware of something called a phaser or a flanger on a guitar. It takes the melody and it goes like this with it, the sound waves. So basically you have the pure melody, and then you have this kind of detuning, it brings the sound up and down, so it's going out of tune in waves, and it creates like a glow around the sound. So what I'm trying to say is, we may not like it, we may not be comfortable with it, but the truth is, those disharmonious aspects of our spiritual lives make the Kirtan better. It's better than it would be if it was sterile. So we should appreciate that also in our relationships. I like every once in a while finding what they call a shark in a khichdi. Whoa! What did I just bite into? A giant chili, it's this surprises, it keeps things fresh. So I wanted to, any other thoughts or comments on this topic? So I wanted to share a little bit about something that I think is kind of, one more? Yes, please.
In the back. Go on. In the pin. In the back.
Oh, two more.
Glasses.
You take, you can go.
Hello. It occurs to me that our spiritual life is not entirely straightforward, and we have ups and downs and things go wrong. And with Kirtan, in the same way, there are ups and downs, and the beat drops out, and the karatal player goes crazy, and the harmonium refuses to respond, and our voices give up. But we never give up, we just carry on. So the spiritual life, no matter how disappointed we feel in ourselves that we are not progressing or whatever, in the same way, we carry on. We go back to basics, we chant, we sing, and Kirtan is the same, that when it goes wrong, when everything is dreadful, we carry on anyway because it's worth it. It's what we do.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, very well.
Buddy?
I thought that often crosses my mind when you're kind of doing preaching or with Kirtan and so forth, is that actually the holy name is all attractive. We kind of get very mental that actually this is Hare Krishna or whatever. And I think one of the pinnacles of that is actually being out on the street doing like Harinam. And one time I was in London with my wife and we couldn't find a Harinam. We were wandering around the whole of London trying to find a Harinam for ages. And there's a street called Compton Street in London. It's famous, it's a gay street, right? And there's a couple of guys on stilts. Well, they weren't guys, they were guys dressed as girls, kind of thing. So they were getting the whole energy of the street and they were doing all this outrageous stuff. And around the corner, the Kirtan comes, the Harinam party comes. And what you saw was the whole energy on the street went to the Kirtan. And the amazing thing is, because the devotees aren't getting off on the energy, they're relishing it, and these guys were then trying to do more outrageous things to draw back the energy. But actually the holy name was so attractive, everyone's just focusing on the name. And I think that thing of just that when you have that, there's no ego in it. Especially on the street, no one cares how good you play Madanga or play cartels. There's a thing where actually no one's enjoying that attention. And it's a very rare thing to see in this world where actually no one gets off on attention. And there's a real purity to it, so yeah, that's just a thought.
Beautiful. I have a very interesting story. I was at a workshop, not a workshop, a retreat in the DC area with Radhanath Swami, and Radhanath Swami is my spiritual master, and I think we can all agree he's a very good kirtan leader. His kirtans are very ecstatic. He always jokes that his voice sounds like a jackal. He says jackal particularly. He likes comparing his voice to a jackal.
Can I say something? I just wanted to say, because you said the word jackal, just this year at Kirtan Mela, he was singing and I was sitting next to him. And after his kirtan, which was rip-roaring, the whole temple was completely ecstatic, he leans over to me and he says, "Did you hear? A jackal entered the temple." And I said, "Maharaj, you mean me?" He said, "No, I mean me."
So he was sitting here, and I was sitting here, and it was a group around, and he started playing. You know that tune that he does? So he went, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, like that, And at some point I'm like, I know exactly what tune Maharaj is going to sing, and I know what note. And this is going on like 2 minutes, like this. Is Maharaj just... And I'm just sitting there, I'm thinking, oh God. So what, as a disciple, what is the service? Should I just shut up and just sit there? Or should I just look over and, hit the thing? What should I do, So I'm sitting here thinking, oh Krishna, please let me see through a pure heart what's the right service for this. So I just thought, what's the most loving thing that I can do? So I just leaned over and I went, boop, on the harmonium. And Maharaj went, Hare Krishna, Hare... Didn't even look at me, right? Just carried on. From right there, perfect, no problem. He didn't look at me, didn't look annoyed, didn't look happy, didn't anything. And then afterwards, there was only one devotee who had come to this thing, and most of us were teachers or other things, and it was mostly kind of new people. And someone asked, this devotee asked this question at the end of a long discourse: what if you are doing what you think is your service, and other people are being disturbed by your service and think that you are being a disturbance as you're trying to do your service? It's kind of an interesting question, right? You think you're giving your best, but they think it's disturbing to them. So then Maharaj said, well, for example, It gets worse. Alright, so for example, let's say that you are a kirtan singer. And the only reason why you do kirtan is to attract the opposite sex. Still, you should do kirtan. Because through this service, you're purifying yourself of these desires. So still you should do your service. So it's funny, it's funny how kirtan will do that. Kirtan will give us an unlimited amount of opportunities to become humble and go deeper. And in that way, it's like this morning, I'm trying to be humble. They asked me to sing Guru Puja. I'm trying to approach the humble mood. I have no qualification to worship Srila Prabhupada. So here, okay. And it's about to start, and I don't know the structure here or anything. So I looked at a few people, looked at my friends, and they're like, yeah, start. It was all quiet in the temple. We finished greeting the deity. It was quiet. I'm thinking, okay, everyone's waiting for me. So as soon as I start, Jai Prabhupada, I was like, the lotus feet of our spiritual. All right, sorry. Gauravani, he's also hear himself sing, and he's always so eager. I tried. So I thought it's so nice when you can be in the right mood and receive the humility that the Holy Name is giving you. So I feel like you brought up street sankirtan. So I believe that street sankirtan is. I think street sankirtan, and it's all its varieties, whether it's sitting, whether standing, or whether it's distribution. I think street sankirtan is probably the dearest thing to Lord Chaitanya. That's my kind of feeling. I'm not trying to raise something up above something else. I'm just saying I think street sankirtan is like the dearest thing to Lord Chaitanya. So I think that when we're doing that, we're as close to Lord Chaitanya as we can be. And one of my realizations about the Holy Name is that I used to work in film. I don't know if anyone knows this. I used to work in Hollywood. I met some very famous people, and one particular guy I'm thinking of, when he walked in the room, everybody stopped and turned and looked. Like, you couldn't help it. It's just like, whoa, that guy is handsome. And everyone's just looking like, wow, he's just got handsome Shakti. and it's a thing. It actually has nothing to do with anyone else. It's just, this is some Shakti that he had. And I realized that if we were in Krishna's presence, we would be completely overwhelmed. Like, I was overwhelmed when this guy walked in the room, When someone so famous or so beautiful speaks to you, you feel a little nervous. Like, should I look him in the eye? I don't want him to think I'm looking at him. He's going to think that I think that he thinks that I'm thinking that he's thinking what I'm thinking. It's just a little bit of Shakti, and suddenly you become, So, and when he was speaking to me, it's like my hands are on the table. This is not a relaxed. Why are my hands doing this? I never sit like this. So then I put my hands in my pockets. It's like, of course, yeah. Why are my hands in my pockets? I should gesture. Gesturing is normal. Let me gesture while I talk. You just become awkward in the presence of someone. What to speak of Bhagavan, the source of all opulences, right? So the Holy Name is the Lord in the most intimate form. And yet, we feel so relaxed with the Holy Name that we even chant the Holy Name in the bath. Chant the Holy Name everywhere and anywhere. So in one way, through Lord Chaitanya's mercy, we have a closer relationship with Krishna through the Holy Name than we will ever have in the spiritual world. That's my realization, that actually through the Holy Name, we're having an intimate relationship that is inaccessible in any other way. So I think if we receive whatever lessons come from the Holy Name in that way, it's really, really pleases Lord Chaitanya. So thank you. Yes, Mata?
Thank you. You mentioned, Gauravani Prabhu, the humility that Kirtan can bring as a metaphor in our growing spiritual life. I want to share an experience we had on this in a room in the medical school building where we actually trained as students back in 1975. But just 2 years ago, we were brought in really to work with the students just before their exams, final exams. It's a very stressful time. And it was about Kirtan and Prasadam, of course. So they had the Prasadam, and my son, who was with me, because he was doing the initial work with them about how to present yourself in a viva so that you're not so nervous to do your best, he looked at me and he said, "Mom, you be careful, because in this group there are Muslim students as well." And so I was a little more nervous than I would be. But what occurred was what you said, is to actually signpost, because it's a new students there. Many of them may not have heard the holy name. Some, of course, may have, because the holy name is very famous now, and we're surprised how many people.
Sure.
Always, they come and say Hare Krishna when you're not expecting for people to come and say Hare Krishna to you. So I was just thinking, and by the mercy of the holy name, it occurred to me to say to the group that actually what we're going to chant and say is very, very special and personal. And if you feel that you don't want to participate, then you have the freedom just to hear, or actually even leave and come back and join us once you feel you can connect. And when we got chanting, and I dared to open my eyes, it was actually the two Muslim girls who were chanting the loudest. And in the feedback, they gave the best feedback to actually say that it really helped them to switch off the very stressful mind space that they were in just before the exams.
Right.
So I was completely humbled that this fear, but the holy name can reach these, in spaces where I just didn't know.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, fine.
Well, there's so much. This is obviously a lifetime of study, many lifetimes of study, and I have really enjoyed this time with all of you. I guess there's so much we could talk about, but we just have 5 minutes left. So what I would like to do is give you something that I have learned more recently as a musician and also as a kirtan leader that I find incredibly important. And it's called dynamics. The way something sounds and the way something actually sounds and the way something sounds to you are not the same. Right? The way it feels and the way it sounds are not the same. So I have a tendency to try and push when I feel like something needs to move up, like to another level of intensity. I tend to push. I tend to sing louder. And what happens is you lose the dynamics if you do that. So taking into consideration this point, Srila Prabhupada's point about singing in a way that you can, not be fatigued, I want to kind of just at the end here, I just want to give a practical thing. The difference between a crescendo in energy and a crescendo in volume, right? And I want to really encourage devotees more and more to crescendo in energy, but not in volume. And I just want to, I'm trying to figure out how the best way to do this is, but like, when we're at a fast place in a kirtan, you can develop more intensity and more attention to the holy name without playing louder. And sometimes, let's play kind of at a fast pace, so we're kind of towards the crescendoing part of a kirtan. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, everyone. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, that we were going quieter when we went faster, right? You have the same feeling that you have if I was yelling, except now you can lean into the kirtan and actually appreciate it more, as opposed to having to like put earplugs in and move away from the... So another thing is, faster doesn't mean louder. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. I just want to encourage all the Mridanga players out there, faster does not equal louder. And one of the best Mridanga players in the world, that, in my opinion, is my dear friend Ananta Govinda. He plays so quietly. And the incredible thing is, he'll just tip his finger and the whole mood of the kirtan will change, because he's so plugged into what is supporting the kirtan. So more and more we have to, now that we have some generations of kirtan practitioners, we have to learn, it's okay if there's 10 kartal players, if they're all playing sweetly, you know? And the idea is, you know, how is it at Lord Chaitanya's time they were able to do kirtan without a microphone? Is because they would play quietly enough to hear the person singing, you know? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. I'm trying to give you something that I'm still learning, but it's taken me so many years to just have a little faith in myself, have a little faith in the holy name. You don't have to push, like the Kirtan can do it, you know. So let people lean in, you know, and you can have those fat high moments, but then bring it back in, you know. Really play with the dynamics, you know. And I would encourage everyone to try this in your practice. For everyone, try leading Kirtan as quietly as possible. Try playing any instrument as quietly as possible, and you'll find all these other dynamic energies come in to support you if you're playing more quietly. So, thank you so much. Thank you for encouraging me, for being here. I sincerely pray to Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda that all of you become world famous Kirtan leaders, traveling all over the world or staying in your hometown, whatever you want. And I pray that you can fill the world with Lord Chaitanya's love, and that we can, using Kirtan as the starting point, we can build this culture, grassroots culture of listening and of welcoming and of kindness, and using Kirtan as that common denominator. Bring everyone together, care for each other. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Kirtan.
Who's next on the schedule?
Dear devotees, please stay and sing with Madhva Prabhu. He'll be sing for the next hour before Prasadam.